There is no enemy out there. The war is inside the skull. The fight is not against them. It is against the coward within. A war against the part that craves comfort, the part that whispers excuses, the part that begs for the easy way out. The true opponents are internal. Fear, doubt, a lazy addiction to mediocrity. Stop trying to control the world. The only thing to conquer is the traitor in the mind. Discipline is not a gentle request. It is a brutal command given to the self. This is not about obedience to others. This is about self-forged steel. Every single hesitation is a crack in the armor. Every comfortable indulgence is a poison willingly consumed. Every single excuse is a quiet surrender. Power does not come from applause. It does not come from external approval. That is a cheap drug for the weak-willed. True power is forged in absolute silence. It is forged in the furnace of solitude. It is the cold, relentless, unstoppable force of self-control when no one is watching. Comfort makes the body and mind soft. Approval makes the spirit a slave.
This path is a solitary one. It is built in the dark, away from the crowds, with private sweat and personal blood, far from the noise of the cheering sections. No one is coming to the rescue. No one can walk this path for another. A person's own hand is the only one that can pull them from the mud. A person's own will is the only thing that matters. Each day, the sun rises on a choice: to choose the side of weakness or to choose the side of the warrior. Master this internal, chaotic war, and everything else becomes simple. Fear dies when it is starved of attention. Defeat becomes nothing more than data. A body will break. It will decay. That is a fact. But a will that has been hammered into shape by the relentless force of daily discipline, that will is indestructible. This is not about beating other people. It is about crushing the lesser version of the self. It is the calm a person commands in the storm, the strength they find in total isolation, the light they create in absolute, profound darkness. This is the only victory that lasts, the victory over the internal enemy, the conquest of the weak self.
There is no finish line in this war. Every single breath is a new choice, a decision to submit to weakness or to sharpen the edge, a moment to break down or to build up. The war is not coming tomorrow. The war is not in the past. The war is now. Fight it. The external world is a projection, a reflection of the internal state. A chaotic mind creates a chaotic life. A disciplined mind creates a purposeful one. People search for external solutions to internal problems. They change jobs, cities, partners, hoping the scenery will change the script. It will not. The script is written in the mind, and it plays on a loop until it is rewritten with the brutal ink of action. Hesitation is the voice of fear. It whispers, "Wait for a better moment. Gather more information. Be sure." It is the siren song of inaction, a beautiful melody that leads to a shipwreck. The warrior acts on an 80% solution, while the scholar is still planning a 100% one. And the warrior is the one who wins, because the battle is won in the arena, not on the blueprint. Indulgence is a loan from the future, a loan with an impossibly high interest rate. The comfort of the moment is bought with the currency of future weakness,
with the currency of future regret. The disciplined person does the opposite. They invest the pain of the present for the dividend of future strength. One path leads to a life of compounding freedom. The other leads to a life of compounding debt. The choice is made in the small, daily transactions. Applause is a dangerous, addictive drug. It trains the spirit to seek validation outside itself. It makes a person's worth dependent on the fickle opinions of the crowd. The warrior must wean themselves off this drug. They must learn to find their validation internally, in the quiet, simple, powerful act of keeping the promise made to themselves. In the dark, when no one is clapping, that is the only approval that builds a foundation of steel. Solitude is the training ground of the strong. The world is a noisy, distracting, chaotic place. It is designed to pull a person away from their center, to make them reactive, to make them part of the herd. Solitude is where the real work is done, where the mind can be calmed, where the mission can be clarified, where the signal can be separated from the noise. The person who cannot be alone is a person who is afraid of what they will find there. The warrior is not afraid. They seek out the silence, because that is where they forge their greatest weapon, an unbreakable, focused, sovereign will.
The choice each day is simple and binary: growth or decay, action or inaction, discipline or comfort. There is no third option. There is no neutral ground. Every single moment is a vote, cast for one side or the other. The life a person has in 5 years is simply the sum total of these daily votes. The tally is being taken right now, with the next choice, the next action. Fear is a phantom. It has no power of its own. It borrows its power from the attention it is given. It is a shadow that seems terrifying in the dark, but when the light of conscious, focused action is shone on it, it disappears. The only way to defeat fear is to starve it, to withdraw the fuel of attention and rumination, and to pour that fuel into the fire of action. Action is the only thing that kills the phantom of fear. Defeat is a teacher, not a judge. It is not a verdict on a person's worth. It is a brutally honest critique of their current strategy. The amateur takes defeat personally. Their ego is wounded. The professional takes defeat analytically. Their ego is irrelevant. They dissect the failure with cold, clinical precision. They find the lesson, they adjust the plan, and they re-engage smarter and stronger. Defeat is the tuition paid for the education of mastery. The wise person pays it willingly.
The body is a temporary vessel. It will age, it will weaken, it will fail. To build an identity solely on the body's strength is to build a house on a crumbling cliff. The will, however, can be made indestructible. It can be tempered and hardened through daily challenge, through the consistent choice of the hard path over the easy one. It can become a force that transcends the limitations of the flesh. A will forged in the fires of discipline is a legacy that outlasts the body that housed it. This is not a game of competition. It is a game of creation. The goal is not to be better than someone else. The goal is to be better than the person you were yesterday. The only true opponent is the reflection in the mirror, the weaker self that craves ease and avoids pain. That is the enemy that must be defeated every single day. The victory over that internal enemy is the only victory that brings lasting peace. Calm in the storm is not a gift. It is a skill that is earned. It is earned by voluntarily walking into smaller storms, by practicing discomfort, by facing down smaller fears, by building a track record of resilience. The person who has only ever known calm seas will be the first to panic when the hurricane arrives. The warrior has been training in the rain for years. The hurricane is just a bigger version of their daily practice. They are not surprised, they are not broken, they are prepared.
Strength in isolation is the ultimate power. Most people derive their strength from the group, from the validation, the support, the shared identity. This strength is borrowed. It is fragile. The moment the group is gone, the strength is gone. The warrior builds their strength from the inside out, on a foundation of their own values, their own discipline, their own code. This strength is owned. It is permanent. It does not depend on external conditions. It is a light that shines just as brightly in the solitary darkness as it does in the crowded square. There is no final destination called success. There is only the process, the daily, endless, brutal, beautiful process of choosing to sharpen the edge, of choosing to build instead of break. The moment a person believes they have arrived is the moment they begin to decay. The war is never over. The choice is presented with every single breath, to rise to the standard or to fall back into comfort. This is the existential reality of a meaningful life. It is a constant, unending, glorious struggle. The pain is not a problem. It is a signal that growth is happening, a signal that a limit is being tested and pushed. A mind that has been trained to seek comfort interprets this signal as a command to stop. A mind that has been trained for war interprets this signal as a command to continue, to lean into the resistance, to embrace the friction, because that is where the transformation occurs. The relationship with pain is the great differentiator.
Excuses are the language of the weak self. It is a sophisticated, clever, seductive language designed to justify inaction and preserve comfort. To become a warrior, one must become fluent in a new language, the language of ownership, the language of action. This language is simple. It is direct. It is brutal. It has no room for if, but, or maybe. It only has room for I will, and it is done. The old language must be unlearned. The new language must be drilled through daily, consistent, relentless practice. The solitary path is not a curse. It is a requirement. Greatness is not a committee decision. It is not born in the consensus of the crowd. It is born in the lonely, courageous, visionary heart of a single individual who is willing to stand apart, who is willing to be misunderstood, to be criticized, to be alone. The herd moves towards safety and mediocrity. The warrior must be willing to walk the other way, towards the danger, the uncertainty, the possibility of a greater life. The loneliness is the price of that journey, a price the warrior pays without complaint. The will is a muscle. It grows stronger with every act of resistance, every time a person chooses the hard right over the easy wrong, every time they get up when they want to stay down, every time they push through the pain barrier. They are completing a repetition for their will. The person who lives a comfortable, easy life has a weak, atrophied will. The person who embraces a life of challenge has a will that has been forged into a weapon of immense power. The will is the most important muscle to train.
Mastering the internal world is the only game worth playing. The external world is in constant flux. Fortunes are won and lost. Empires rise and fall. Opinions change like the wind. To build a life on the foundation of the external is to build a house on a shifting sand dune. The internal world, the world of character, of will, of discipline, that is the only ground that can be made solid. The person who was the master of their own mind is a king in a kingdom that can never be conquered. They are a fortress that can never be breached. They are a force that can never be broken. The choice is not between success and failure. It is between fighting and surrendering. The person who stays in the fight can never truly fail, because every defeat is a lesson. Every setback is a setup for a comeback. The only true failure is the decision to quit, to surrender the sword and walk off the battlefield. That is the only loss from which there is no recovery. So the mission is simple. Stay in the damn fight. At all costs. For all time. The war is always now. Not in the memory of yesterday's battles, not in the fantasy of tomorrow's victories. In the stark, brutal, beautiful reality of this single moment. This single choice. This single action. This is where the entire war is won or lost. This is the only ground that matters. This is the only time that is real. So fight here. Fight now. With everything you have. And then do it again in the next moment. And the next. For the rest of your life.
This is the path. There is no other. It is a path of fire, of pressure, of solitude. But it is the only path that leads to a life of meaning, a life of power, a life of freedom. The comfort of the other path is a lie. It is the comfort of a cage. It is the peace of a graveyard. You were not born for a cage. You were not born for a grave. You were born for the fire. So walk into it and be forged. There is no final peace, only the ongoing war. The war to become the person you were meant to be. Do not pray for the war to end. Pray for the strength to fight it well, to fight it with honor, with courage, with an unbreakable will. That is the only prayer that will ever be answered, and the answer will be forged in the sweat of your own effort. The time for talk is over. The time for war is now. Pick up your weapon, which is your will, and fight.